Hey, you guys, and welcome to this week's edition of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought. Today, we have our special guest, Sally Fallon Morell. I'm so excited to have her here. And we're going to be talking about some of the top changes that you can make in your diet to give you the greatest health benefit, the fastest, the biggest oomph for your change when it comes to your health. And I'm just so excited to have Sally here. Like so many of you guys probably, I feel like my cooking, my approach to health, everything really changed after reading her foundational book, Nourishing Traditions. And so she has been with she may not know this, but she has been a mentor to me in my kitchen for a lot of years. And I really credit her and all of her work with the health of my family. Everybody is so healthy. I'm so thankful for it. For those of you guys who don't know her, though, I want to give you a little bit of a bio here, and that is as a best-selling author of the nutritional cookbook Nourishing Traditions, Sally Fallon Morell is the leading spokesperson for a return to nutrient-dense diets, including raw milk, animal fats, organ meats, bone broths, and lacto-fermented foods. She is the founding president of the Weston A Price Foundation and a founder of a campaign for real milk. She's also the president of the New Trends Publishing, which publishes books on diet and healthy living, including books in the Nourishing Tradition series. There are several of them. If you don't own them all, you will want to. They're incredible. In 2009, she and her husband, Jeffrey Morell, purchased a farmstead, which is called the P.A. Bowen Farmstead, where they produce award-winning artisan raw milk cheeses, Woodlands pork, and pastured eggs and poultry. So she's not just writing about it. She's not just researching it. She's actually putting it into practice in her very own homestead and farmstead. So I am very excited to get to welcome Sally Fallon Morell. Sally, thank you so much for taking time and joining us here.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. I'm happy to be here. I remember when your husband was here and my kitchen was full of cameras, microphones, when we did the broth series.
Yes, it's so amazing. And that was just so neat for me because for so many years I'd been trying to get him to drink his broth, after reading
Oh,
your
yeah.
book. And then there he was actually in your kitchen and he came back telling me all these benefits of bone broth that he had learned. And
That
I
he
thought that was
didn't
just
know
great.
about. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you didn't even. And to this day, ever since being out at your place for that filming, he has a cup of bone broth for breakfast every single morning. So he's really
Good.
practiced what
Good.
he learned. So it's been amazing. But I love that you guys have opened your own farmstead and that you're really taking what you learn to a whole different level and not just educating people about it, but you're actually helping to provide amazingly healthy food to your community. What's that journey been like going from writing about it? And of course, you're a cook anyway, so you've been cooking,
Yeah.
but then to start providing food to the community.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, very challenging. I love the role of running a farm, but it opened my eyes to a lot of things. This is not for the timid, and you really do need resources before you can get started. So you need to have some other type of income, because your farm is not going to make income right away.
Yeah.
And you need things. You need fencing. You need chicken pluckers. You need a barn. And so you need to make a business plan and double the costs and double the time.
Yeah.
You might be
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing to think about with starting any small business, but then you start adding in livestock to that
Yes.
mix or depending on nature, and it really is even more true, isn't it?
Yeah. And it really depends on having very good people work for you, uh, which we have. We have wonderful staff. And I'm
Yeah.
not the hands-on farmer because I'm doing things like right, but you definitely need people that you get along with for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, good thoughts. That's great. Well, as we look around the world today, I feel like more and more people are sick. They're, we just
Yeah,
see this everywhere.
and pretty much everybody's sick unless they have totally thrown out all the processed food in their diets and stopped getting vaccinated.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how quickly this decline feels like it has happened to me. I do not think that this was a case when I was a child. Most people were healthy
No,
that
no.
that I was aware of, but now it's like
Mhm.
everybody's on a medication. Everybody has
Yes.
some syndrome or illness or autoimmune or something or other, and it just seems to be getting more and more so. Do you kind
One of the yeah, one of the reasons that people are on medications is because they've lowered the standards so that more people, quote unquote, need these medications. A perfect example is blood pressure. In the old days, normal blood pressure was considered to be your age plus 100 over 90. And the NIH actually illegally changed those standards to it was 130 over 80, and now if you're 120 over 70, you're borderline hypertension. So they pretty much put everybody on blood pressure drugs, and these are terrible drugs. And the worst part about them is you can't get off them. You can't get off blood pressure drugs cold turkey.
Yeah, so it's kind of this trap that we find ourselves in, I think. So we have more and more people looking for answers and trying to get
Yeah,
away from some
yes,
of these
it's true.
pharmaceutical answers. But I think on the other side, there's so many opinions out there and modern answers. I mean, I had one naturopath that I worked with tell me that the only way to tell what foods were good for me or bad for me was to put it in some sort of a circuit and run electrical current through it with my blood to see. Like some of these things, I was just like, oh my goodness gracious, I'm sorry, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that God made that system to work that way. you know, I just don't know
Well,
that
did
we
your
need all.
ancestors eat this food? Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
right. I mean, that's a pretty newfangled answer even from the health side. And
yeah,
so I think we have a lot
yeah,
of confusion about what should we be doing to get
yeah.
back to just
And it's
good
deliberate.
foundation.
It's deliberate. On the one hand, you have the kind of meat-based diets, the keto and carnivore, and it used to be the Atkins diet. And then on the other hand, you've got the plant-based diets, vegetarian, vegan, and also the USDA guidelines, which is mostly plants. And you've got these two extremes, and that's not where it's at. It's the diets that Dr. Price looked at, they varied from very high in meat to very little meat, and the people were still healthy. So it wasn't the macronutrients, it was the micronutrients, it was the vitamins and minerals.
Now, I'm very familiar with your work with Dr. A Price and like studying him and what he's done. But for our listeners, would you just give a really quick like background in who Weston A Price was and the work that he did?
Yeah, Weston Price was a dentist. He had a practice in Cleveland, Ohio in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And he was asking himself, why are my patients so sick? Why do they have mouths full of decay and infection? And why don't they have straight teeth? Why do they need braces and have overbites and underbites? Because the world was opening up at that time, and the report that always came back about traditional people untouched by modern civilization was that they had beautiful teeth, beautiful wide smiles. And so he decided to find out whether this was true, and if it was true, what these healthy people were eating. So he spent 10 years of his life from 1931 to about 1942, traveling to remote parts of the globe and describing the people's health, counting cavities in their mouths, and then describing the foods that they ate. And these diets were all very different, but in analyzing the foods, which he took home to his laboratory, he found that they were very rich in minerals and very high in what he called the fat soluble activators. Those are vitamins A, D, and K, which we get from animal fats, organ meat, certain types of seafood, all the foods that we're being told not to eat were the foods that were most important to these traditional people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And those are a lot of the things, of course, that we're very shy on today. Like you said, they're
Yeah,
being
yeah.
told not to eat them, that they're not healthy and stay away from them.
Yeah, the propaganda has been so intense that people believe that it's vulgar to eat lard and that it's indulgent to eat butter. And those are two very wonderful, important fats to have in your diet.
Yeah, I no wonder you get sayings like, when people say something, well, it doesn't taste any good, so it must be healthy, right? Like, no, that's the wrong
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
healthy.
Well, yeah. And I do like to stress that there's no renunciation in our diet. There's no extremes. It's just going back to the foods of our ancestors. You're in our diet. You can have salt. You can have sauces. You can have butter, all the butter you want. You can have dairy products as long as they're the right kind of dairy products, and but always from natural sources. So grass-fed animals, especially.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in. If somebody is looking at this world and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm not well, people around me aren't well, all of this diet information that is out there is so conflicting. In your
Yeah,
opinion,
confusing.
very confusing. What are the top 3
Yeah.
things that you can do that's going to give you the most bang for your buck as far as health goes when it comes to changing your diet?
Yes. Well, number one, we say get your fats right. FATS. Get your fats right. Go through your house and your kitchen and throw out all the industrial seed oils. This is really the number one thing that's killing us. They weren't in our diets before 1900, and they cause cancer, they cause heart disease, they interfere with growth and development in your children, they interfere with hormone production. So throw away the oils, the pan sprays, the margarines, and those spreads, so-called healthy spreads, the mayonnaise and the salad dressings, and all this stuff made with these disgusting industrial seed oils. And what do you use instead? Well, butter is the number one food, particularly grass-fed butter. Use it liberally, and then we cook in lard from pastured pigs, from woodlands pigs. Tallow is a great animal fat, and then I'm more and more stressing the poultry fats, goose, duck, and chicken, because these are great sources of vitamin K2, which is Dr. Price's X factor. And so no skinless, you don't have to eat skinless chicken breasts, okay? you, you eat the skin with the fat in it, and when you bake a chicken, you make a gravy with the fat that's in the pan, like our ancestors did. And they didn't realize what they were doing, but they just ate this chicken in the most delicious way they could, and they were getting the vitamin K that they needed.
I've got so many thoughts going through my mind right now because I feel like our health changed so much when we started changing our fats. But it did a few unexpected
Yes.
things for us. One is that all of a sudden we didn't want the sugars anymore.
Fats raise dopamine, and that's what sugar does. And there was a wonderful study that I wrote about. So these researchers had got their rats addicted to sugar. They had the sugar water or whatever. And then they fed them a diet of 40% lard. And the rats did not want the sugar water. And the researchers were saying that this was a bad thing, that the rats did not want their tasty treats anymore, because they were eating all this, what they call the chronic high fat diet, to make it sound like this was a bad thing. But so many people have told me this. When they give themselves permission to eat butter and cook in lard and eat bacon and eat egg yolks, the first thing they do is gorge on these foods because they haven't had them in a long time and the body needs them so badly. So first thing they do is gorge, but then after a while, usually takes 2 or 3 months, they've taken in the fats that they need. They don't want as much. And then they notice that they don't want the sugar as much either.
Mm-hmm. It was a big change for us. And I think we followed that exact pattern where at first we were, we had all the jokes in the house about liking a little bit of bread with our butter. because all of a sudden we felt like we
Exactly.
could go ahead and eat it. But there came a point where it was like, no, I've had enough. I don't actually want that much butter on my bread. I want a little bit less. But yeah, it was drastic, the change in our taste for sugar and for sweet things. And I would have said that I was one of those kind of sugar addicted. I grew up on candy, on all this stuff. I also grew up on a lot of really, really good food. So luckily we had liver at our table. We had a lot of really good food. My mom never used margarine. It was always butter. And so we had lots going for us, but I
was
definitely
lucky in
liked that sugar. But so this was a big change for me, and I've never gone back to wanting the sugar in the same way.
Yeah, it's really very interesting. The other thing you find is you don't want to eat between meals. When you eat a meal, let's say you eat bacon and eggs for breakfast and you have plenty of butter at lunch, you don't think about eating between meals. And then suddenly you're hungry and you eat, but you're not snacking all morning or all afternoon.
Okay, so let's talk about the next thing that you think is the most important after fats. And after getting your fats right, what's the next thing that we can do?
Well, the next thing is go raw on the dairy. Raw cheese, raw milk, raw cream, if you can get it. And that may be really shocking to some people, especially today when all this fear porn is going out there about how raw dairy is going to give you bird flu and kill you. They're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first mandatory pasteurization laws in New York in 1913. But what they're not telling people is that when they passed that law in New York, everybody recognized that raw milk was healthier. Yeah. But they passed the law so that it would be less expensive to regulate. They said that right in the meeting. I got an email today, and it was from a reporter, and she said, well, I've just read this article about how since the bird flu thing, raw milk sales are going up. She said, can you explain this to me? And I said, yes. I said, raw milk drinkers are very smart. Their brains are working, and they're not very easily fooled. And they know that the FDA and CDC are lying to them. So I don't know if she'll email me back, but yeah. So I hope all this backfires on these people. They've been through this before. They know the animosity against raw milk, and it doesn't bother them because they're drinking raw milk. They're not getting sick. Their health has improved. They know how delicious it tastes. They're not suffering from anaphylactic shock. There are 20 or 30 deaths per year from anaphylactic shock to ultra pasteurized milk, and they don't mention that. And so it's the industrial milk that's really dangerous. It's not the raw milk.
It's even hard to find statistics on those things because you go look up, safety of milk, and that's not what you read about anywhere.
Well, we've kept statistics. We have a lot of articles on this at realmilk.com. So, when you really look at it, if anything, raw milk is safer than pasteurized milk, but it's certainly not more dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Now, somewhere back many years ago, and I have to go and look this back up and see the page, but I believe in Nourishing Traditions. Do you have a page that you say one of the most important things that you can do for your health is to get a milk cow, if you can?
Yeah, did I say that? A lot of people did. But now raw milk is so widely available.
Yes.
At our website, realmilk.com, where you can find raw milk, put your zip code in or your state in. We have over 3,000 listings now. And when we started, there were only 20 listings. So it's widely available. There's only a few states where you can't get it.
Which is wonderful. That's just proof that when we vote with our wallet, it actually makes a big difference, doesn't it? It's a big deal. We actually went out after reading some of those things and went and got a milk cow on our side and have never turned back. The few months where she's dry out of the year as we're giving her a break before the next calf are like our sad moments in our house. Yeah. And even other people's raw milk doesn't taste as good as our raw milk, So I think you really get attached to that. But like so many things I've found is that when you first have something that's healthy, like real healthy and seriously nourishing, at first your taste buds maybe aren't accustomed to it. But then after a short period of time, your body craves that so much that it's the only thing that tastes good.
Really good.
And I know raw milk products can be that way for people. They can, have a little flavor at first.
Well, and the other thing is that the people who go to raw milk, by and large, they cannot drink industrial milk. It makes them sick, gives them a headache, makes them throw up, makes them pass out. And so the dairy industry thinks it's going to bring these customers back, but it's not, because people just can't drink this stuff. And the ultra pasteurized milk, which is 95% of the milk on the market, is heated to 284 degrees Fahrenheit, way above the boiling point. And there are studies showing that it's mutagenic, cytotoxic. The proteins are so warped and distorted that they become toxic to the body. So the dairy industry is not going to get these customers back, whatever they do.
It's hard. You don't go back to something that makes you feel awful. It's the biggest change.
That's right. Or it makes you sick, or makes your children sick. You're not going to go back to it. My grandson was getting the milk cartons in school, and he got asthma, and we taught him not to drink that and got him raw milk, and the asthma's gone. And what a wonderful lesson for a 4-year-old to learn. He said, "Oh, Sally, when I drink that milk at school, I get asthma."
It's amazing how much actual change happens, like, in your body. How long do you feel like it takes most people to notice that change if they make a complete change from, the pasteurized dairy into a raw dairy? Is it pretty immediate for most people?
It's pretty immediate. One of the most, I won't say most common, but I have had parents say to me, once we got them off pasteurized milk and put them on raw milk, we saw a change immediately in their behavior. They calmed down, they could concentrate better, they didn't get in as many fights, the temper tantrums went away, and we really began to like our children. We didn't like them very much before, but now they're great kids, Well, they're all great kids, but everybody needs to be fed right. And when you're giving your child a pasteurized milk, you're giving them a glass of foreign proteins, and all the enzymes necessary for absorbing the nutrients, they've all been destroyed. So what's the point?
And what's that do to our little brains, that are developing and having to live on that? And, at the best, it's essentially massive sugar, right? As that, like, that's the best case scenario, is you're unbalancing their blood sugar by making all of that hit their blood sugar. Without all the proper, especially when it's also skimmed, all the non-fat. Oh my goodness, everybody's drinking non-fat milk.
Oh yes, they take the fat out, and that's just a crime. They need that fat. I mean, why is it there? Because mammals need fat to develop normally. And if you look at milk replacer for calves, the third ingredient is animal fat, because they know they need the cholesterol, they need all the stuff in animal fat, the vitamins, the fatty acids, and so forth. And it's, the idea that we should give children skim milk to avoid weight gain does not tarry with the evidence. The evidence shows that children on skim milk and low-fat diets gain more weight and are more addicted to sugar. But I can tell you why. The reason is that the butterfat is actually the most valuable part of the milk. And the industry has figured out that by taking the butterfat out of the milk and putting it in ice cream, they can make 5 times more, or even greater than 5 times more money on the butterfat. So why waste this valuable butterfat on growing children? So these decisions are being made by accountants. And what they want the child to do is be on the skim milk all day long. The body is craving for the butterfat, which it needs. And then at night, the child or the adult or whatever goes to the freezer and eats a half a gallon of ice cream. That's what the industry wants us to do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You can't charge very much more for whole milk versus skim milk, but you can turn it into 2 separate products and charge that way, can't you?
No, exactly. So this whole campaign about drinking skim milk is being promoted by the accountants in these companies. How can we make the most money from this butterfat? And then, of course, they have skim milk as the waste product. And they want us to drink this awful skim milk, which is, when you take protein without the fats, that's really a bad thing to do to your body. Yeah, we need to go back to whole milk and butter. And what do you do with the buttermilk after you've made butter, and the whey after you've made cheese? You have a farm, you feed it to the pigs and chickens. That's what farmers used to do. But if you have a single species farm, that's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so many of the big dairies are now is completely single species. You couldn't have pigs right next door to give all of that waste product to. That's what we're actually looking at here on our homestead, is that we, by accidental circumstances, have ended up with 2 milk cows this year that are both due to freshen very soon. And I'm going, oh dear, what are we going to do with all of this milk that's going to come into the house? And we've decided, we are going to keep them both and milk them both. And we're just going to start clabbering it for the chickens and feeding the pigs with the skim milk after we pull the cream off. Because we always need more cream. There's never enough butter.
Yeah, if you feed whole milk to pigs, they will not fatten. They will not get fat. And the whole point of pigs is to get that great fat, right? But if you feed skim milk to pigs, they will get fat.
Oh, that's great.
And quickly.
Well, there you go, diet industry. That's it. That's great.
You see how topsy-turvy this is. They've made us afraid of fat. And so what this has created is a kind of monster food system where the fat that you need, they're making you pay a huge premium for it and mixing it with sugar and other horrible ingredients like antifreeze. How do we change this? We change this by buying directly from small farmers, by supporting them. We're not going to change this from the top, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's important to bring out here, we're talking about the difference of whole milk and skim milk. What you buy in the grocery store as whole milk is not actually whole milk as it would come out of a cow. It's something closer to like 4% milk.
It's not. Right. What comes out of the cow, it should be 3 to 5% fat, maybe more like 4 to 5% fat. And that's how nature makes milk.
Yeah.
By the way, the milk for, I think it's reindeer, is 25% fat.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the third thing that you would do to make the biggest impact on health.
So the third change is to make bone broth from chicken bones, beef bones, fish bones, okay? And consume that frequently, either as a mug of chicken broth or in a gravy or a sauce or a soup or a stew. And this, again, is what our ancestors did. They ate meat with the collagen, and that's what broth is. It's melted collagen. And our bodies are composed of muscle protein and collagen proteins, basically. And if you just eat muscle proteins, you're going to get some kind of imbalance there, probably likely to develop arthritis, a lot of stiffness and pain. And your skin will not look so good because you need collagen for healthy skin. Your digestion might fail because you need collagen for lining the digestive tract. Learn to make broth and use it in all kinds of creative ways in your cooking.
Yeah, let's talk for a second about different ways to make broth. Or to use it in the kitchen, because, we have a lot out there. If you guys, I've got to say it again, if you don't have a copy of Nourishing Traditions, please go get it. This is something that you should have in your kitchen. But there's also, you have Nourishing Broths as a separate book. And
I wrote a book called Nourishing Broth, which has great recipes in it. Even the editors, who don't often compliment you, said they loved the broth. The sauce section was really thorough, and all these different ways of using broth to make delicious sauces. And meat tastes better with a sauce, and there's a reason for that. The sauce has the melted collagen in it, and usually has fat in it, like cream or butter. And so you're basically eating the whole animal when you make chicken with gravy. Okay, especially if you chop up the liver into the gravy, then you really are getting the whole animal.
Which makes so much sense. It's only in this factory world that we live in that we would even consider eating something like boneless, skinless chicken breasts.
Skinless
Um,
chicken breast. No one would do that unless they were being harangued by the dietitians.
You wouldn't, but if you were growing your own animals, there is no way historically that you would ever just pull the breast off of an animal and then just let the rest of it go to waste because we don't know what to do with the bones or
Yeah,
the fat or all these
exactly.
other things. It just wouldn't have happened historically.
In fact, the way people used to cook was put everything in a big pot. It was either cast iron pot, or if you're in the South Seas, a big shell, or even an underground oven where everything kind of melts together, and you get sort of everything: the blood, the meat, the collagen, the organ meats, the bones. Okay, that was typical of how people ate.
We've gone to, in our household, since we raise and butcher our own meat chickens, we've gone to saving the chicken feet and the heads and necks and putting those back in along with all of the organs. Yes. And we'll just put the entire thing into the broth pot to start. Or we will roast the entire thing and then pull the meat off that we want and put that into the broth pot. And it is amazing now how absolutely thick and gel-like our broth always is. It turns into, like, you can cut it with a knife, literally, which is the sign of a good broth, right?
Exactly. Although I think I demonstrated this, I cooked the broth twice. So the first cooking in the crock pot and then take that out. That will be, like you say, you can cut it with a knife. And that's kind of our mug broth. That's what we drink. But then the second cooking, you get a thinner broth, but it's still great. And that's what we make soup with.
That's amazing. And so when you go to the store and you get this broth that is, like, always, no matter how much you chill it, it's always liquid. Like, let's talk about what you buy for a second. It never gels. It never, no matter what the temperature is. What is that stuff you get from the store?
And well, that's usually water plus MSG flavorings. And the MSG is what gives processed food the meat-like taste. It's also extremely toxic, especially to the hypothalamus, which is the master gland, the seat of impulse control, and really the seat of oxytocin, the cuddly hormone. So it's without the broth makes us a kinder society and culture. Real broth.
Real broth. Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those things, it's so ubiquitous to have that box of broth or that can of broth on your shelf to add into all sorts of different things. But it's one of those things that just has to go.
It's not the real thing.
It's not the real thing. And not only is it not real, but it's actually highly toxic. So it's like the exact opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to your health.
It's not hard to get into the broth habit, at least for chicken broth. You just buy whole chicken, save the bones, and put those into the crock pot. Now, if you can't get feet and heads, one thing you can get at supermarkets is a pig foot. And some stores do carry chicken feet. I've seen them at Whole Foods in Austin, Texas, for example. And I've actually seen them at the Giant here in our little town. So they'll get them for you.
Well, that is just wonderful. And those things make great additions. I know I've started putting in any beef bones that I have right in with my chicken broth too. And people, everybody says, oh, this broth is so good today. Like, we love the flavor in the broth, and it just adds a real richness to it flavor wise. One of the things that I noticed in your broth cookbook is that you actually had a lot of combinations of different types of meats or bones that were put in together to make different broths.
Yes, you can. You can mix the bones.
Well, thank you so much, Sally. We just absolutely love having you here. Thank you for these 3 tips. You guys, this is going to help change your health so much. If you just follow these 3 different things, get that as your starting point.
By the way, let me just say, the broth is so good for your digestion and your mood. I came home the other day and was getting some kind of stomach thing, a little bit of food poisoning maybe. And I pulled some broth out of the freezer and made a mug of broth, and it was like instant. As soon as I drank that mug of broth, it all went away. So,
Wow.
and it's very helpful for mood. There's a truth to chicken soup for the soul.
Yeah, not only does it feel good on your body, but that translates into how the rest of our being
Yeah.
feels too. So valuable.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for your time, Sally. We just really appreciate it. And you guys make these changes. Get yourself a copy of Nourishing Traditions and make sure you actually start implementing these things. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.